The cover page of One Piece Chapter 1110, Starfall, features Yamato deciding to venture through Wano like Oden had in the past. And it looks like we have a continuous cover story on our hands. I absolutely love these. It'll be great to see what the folks in Wano are up to these days. Back on Egghead, 4 massive bolts of black lightning struck the middle of the island. This was surprising enough to catch the attention of every Marine on the scene. Vice Admiral Bluegrass was one such Marine. And with this kind of grim expression, I'd imagine she has realized the gravity of their situation. Even some of the Marine grunts were able to piece things together, since this was just like when Saint Saturn showed up. The giant crewmates were still transporting Bonnie, Frankie, and Atlas when this happened. The sight immediately made Bonnie concerned about the safety of everyone else. A massive arrow was fired. Some of the giants were attacking Marine ships right alongside the Pacifista. The huge cyborgs looked like big toddlers next to fully grown giants. Dory and Brogy were still on their way to the center of the conflict, with 2 others right behind them. We'd then make our way to the Holy Land of Mary Joa. Dr. Vegapunk's pre-recorded address to the world was still playing, and in it, Stella was questioned about something he had. The room of authority that we have seen the 5 elders banter in for more than 20 years was completely vacant, and in the middle of it all was a single summoning circle. In the span of a few minutes, Dr. Vegapunk was able to invent Vega Coffee. By adding just a single drop of the stuff to water, it instantly becomes hot coffee. It was truly a revolutionary invention. He then questioned how much time they had left before they could begin to properly reveal the truth to the world. In reality, the allowance of time was self-imposed and not mandatory at all. However, based on their previous decision, they would need to wait 7 more minutes. The many summoning circles continued to call forth the remaining elders. Luffy was in total disbelief. Surrounding Saint Saturn were these silhouetted figures of 4 horrifying monstrosities. As if to jinx it on purpose, the recorded Vegapunk expressed his doubt that anyone who would want to interfere with the broadcast would be able to do so in time. Sanji was still running as quickly as he could with Stella's unconscious body. He decided to reach out to Nami and the others. Luffy was horrified by the sudden arrival of even more monsters. St. J. Garcia Saturn possessed the powers of a Gyuki, an ox demon yokai that looks like a mix between an ox and a spider. In historic fables, the creature was often used to warn people of the dangers posed by the sea and the unknown. St. Marcus Mars is an Itsumade. Now, this is a very scary bird-like creature with the tail of a serpent. Its name means that which will always come. At times, it has been described to be a vengeful harbinger of death. At other times, it's depicted as the underworld's guardian that feeds on souls. Whatever the case, its appearance is always a terrible sign of impending disaster. It's also my favorite design of the 5. Saint Topman War Curry is a Feng Shi. This boar-like monster actually hails from Chinese mythology. This one is a bit more obscure than the others. But what's funny is that this isn't the first godly boar that we've seen in the series. Yama-san, the mountain god of Wano that was defeated by Odin, was also a boar. Perhaps the divine reverence of the beast was a holdover from their ancestors' fear of Top Man. Saint Ethan Baron Juro is a Bakotsu. As a yokai, this one is even more obscure. I'm under the impression that this one was inspired by several mythologies and stories. And across the board, they serve as symbols of death. And finally, Saint Shepherd Jupiter is a sandworm. For this one, Oda may have been inspired by Dune or something. And together, these calamitous abominations happen to be the supreme overseers of the world government. And seeing them all like this, I can totally understand why Sabo was so terrified. But despite facing the representation of their ancient enemy, they of course had other pressing matters to tend to. Ethan Baron released a hideous neigh as flames surrounded his skeletal form. He rushed forward while using what we may presume to be observation haki. With it, he was able to locate one of the Pacifista units that was currently blasting away at the Marine ships. Horrifically, the demonic eyes of the bony steed shifted to its nostrils before protruding further to reveal the Elder's humanoid face. The distance between them had been cut in an instant, and in the next, Nusjuro's black blade slashed the 3rd generation Pacifista. When the bombardment suddenly concluded, the Marines could not believe their eyes. They didn't even get a chance to see exactly what happened, but the Pacifista had been defeated, and Nusjuro was not done. One after another, he took several of them out in a single jaunt. This all happened in the blink of an eye. All the observers were able to see was a large horse rushing along the coastline. Pacifista in various areas had been taken down. However, what the Marines discovered were not slash marks. Rather, the cyborgs had been partially frozen. This is insane! Nusjuro being a black blade wielder alone is a major testament to his capabilities. Then there's his speed and the fact that he has taken down whole platoons worth of pacifista units capable of staving off a buster call in a matter of seconds. But on top of that, this isn't even just a destructive act. The pacifista are still very valuable to the world government. So instead of breaking them, he has incapacitated them. Remember what Hyogoro taught us back on Wano. Quote, a good katana will cut through steel when you want it to, and it will not break a sheet of paper if you do not wish it so. It is all according to the desire of the swordsman. There's also what Koshiro said to Zoro when he was a child. Quote, the pinnacle of swordsmanship is the power to protect what one wishes to protect and cut what one wishes to cut. Dracula Mihawk is said to be the greatest swordsman in the world. But how often do you suppose this elder has needed to reveal his skills in the last 800 years? And do you really think anyone would have survived such an encounter? Then there's the fact that he is a skeletal creature that possesses ice powers of some sort. That totally reminds me of Brook. Sanji looked over his shoulder to see St. Marcus Mars make his ascent. Mr. 4 reached out to the others, or rather, more specifically, the ladies of the crew. He couldn't exactly explain what they were up against on the ground level, but he knew that they needed to leave right away. Nami heard him loud and clear, but was confused. A marine doctor was able to assess the current state of the pacifista. From there, an announcement was made about the freezing of their circuitry that has effectively paralyzed them. To this, the Marines cheered with glee. Doberman saw this as their chance to get rid of Jewelry Bonnie and regain complete control over the machines. At the same time, the mythical form of St. Mars was focused on Egghead's upper layer, while Ethan Baron continued to freeze pacifista units around the island. The Marines knew that Bonnie was traveling to the northeast shore with the Straw Hat crew members. At this point, half of the pacifista units had been taken out. Sanji didn't specify what exactly was happening, but he told the others to prioritize escape. He warned them that an actual monster was headed their way right now. Again, they really needed to run away. The Elder released a chilling bestial battle cry as he nosedived towards the protective layer. And for the record, hearing the Itsumade's cry is said to be a sign of impending death. Though this is really bad. Large explosions caused by the laser system followed this. But if this guy's durability is anything like Saint Saturn's, then this shouldn't be an issue for him at all. Ethan Baron refused to relent and continued to freeze more Kuma clones. Back in the middle of the island, Luffy was doing his best to avoid Saturn's extended appendages. At the same time, Jupiter began making his move as well. He slammed himself headfirst into the ground, and Luffy immediately knew that the giant worm was digging below the surface. So even though the two have gone elsewhere, the elders recognized Luffy to be worthy of facing three of them at once. Usopp took over the call with Sanji. He of all people was more than happy to run away. But unfortunately, Zoro and Jinbei hadn't returned just yet. On the bright side, the Thousand Sunny had been stopped. Brook mentioned how he knew everything would be just fine. In response, Lilith kicked him since it was all thanks to Usopp. Realizing how bad things were becoming, Jinbei resolved himself to bring Zoro back by force if he has to. In the midst of his battle against Rob Lucci, one of Zoro's swords spiraled into the air. Lucci spoke of how tempting it is to seek out the source of all the strong haki they were feeling. Zoro also noticed how these presences were all over the place now. Finally, Zoro and Lucci were within view for Jinbei. Sanji stressed that it was up to Jinbei to resolve things since Zoro was putting everyone else in danger. He then called Zoro a liability, something that Zoro was able to hear. He paused for a moment. Believing this to be an opening, Lucci rushed in with a new attack. Spotted handgun. Zoro casually evaded by tilting his head in the direction of his spiraling blade. He caught it, put it in his mouth, and finally decided to use his three-sword style. Zoro then revealed a new move of his own, Spotted Leopard Hahava Hunt, what seems to be a move made just for the CP0 agent. And with this attack, Rob Lucci has been defeated. Zoro is really built different. I would love to see what major opponent of Luffy's has been defeated by Mr. 4 over there. But elsewhere, Luffy looked below himself in shock. The colossal worm appeared beneath him. Then it opened its massive maw faster than he could evade. A second later, and Luffy was inside of the Elder's mouth. But two old friends were charging forward. Brogy asked Dory if he saw Luffy, and Dory called his face nostalgic. They both agreed that the dark depths of a monster's gullet were no place for someone like him. Together, they severed the monster's head with a combined cleave, known as Sun Saw. Luffy emerged triumphantly with an eruption of laughter. He was surprised to see the old giants were on the island too. Big faces were popping up all over the place. Brogy laughed and said how it had been too long since they'd last met. Dory proclaimed that they had come to see him, since the wait was becoming unbearable. And just so you know, certain species of worms are capable of regenerating lost body parts. For some, this includes their heads, and I don't doubt that this will be the case for the Elder as well. At this point, sea stone or a lot of water is the only way I can see any of these guys really going down. And that's assuming that they're all devil fruit users. Notice how the names we received for their forms weren't the names of devil fruits. But even so, right now, beating them is not the objective. But man, how surreal is it that the Straw Hats are actually facing the 5 Elders right now? In the comments, let us know which of the 5 you like the most right now. We still haven't seen anything from War Curry, but I'm sure that will change soon. As always, I'm Sliceable Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.